Konnichiwa! Welcome to another featured film for our East Asian film tour. This one from Japan, and it's entitled Udon from 2006, so it's over a decade old now. Another old film, really? Well, it's about noodles, so it's kind of timeless, and it's mostly showing modern Japanese culture, and that hasn't changed that much in the last 10 years either. The director of this film is one Katsuyuki Motohiro. The writer is Masahi Toriyama. I'm sure I totally hackneyed both those names, so that's okay. The runtime is 134 minutes. That's 2 hours, 14 minutes. I know that seems long. Of course, it's in Japanese. You're going to see some English subtitles. However, the genre is comedy. It's a comedy, kind of lighthearted family drama. I think you'll enjoy it. Most of the students enjoy it, even though they say it's a little long. Now, the filming locations for this are Takamutsu, Kagawa, Japan. And very briefly, Times Square, New York, but we don't care about that. However, they do film on location wherever they suggest they are. So let's place it for you very quickly. You know the 4 main islands of Japan by this point in the course. Hokkaido, the one way up north. Honshu, the main island, where Tokyo, and it's the biggest one, where most of the people and most of the action is. Kyushu, that's further south. And then there's one, the littlest island of the 4 main islands, that's tucked right up underneath Honshu, and that's Shikoku. And that's where our story takes place. Specifically on Kokoku is the prefecture of Kagawa. And you can consider prefectures in Japan like states in the United States, although it's slightly different, and there's way more of them, so I've never really memorized any of them, and I'm not going to. But on Shikoku Island, this one prefecture of Kagawa. Now, you're in the opening scenes of this film as he's flying back from New York City and coming back into Japan. He's going to probably fly into Tokyo, I think, and then he's going to take a bus into Shikoku, and so you'll actually see this very specific bridge I can point out to you on a map for just a moment that's on the Seito-Chuo Expressway that takes the main character from Honshu Island to Kagawa Prefecture on Shikoku. So we can actually place this one exact bridge. I love it when we can do that. Now, as far as I can tell, and I have no reservations about it, it's filmed on location. It's set in Kagawa Prefecture in Japan, in this town. Now, Kagawa is the smallest prefecture of Shikoku Island, somewhat rural, not as heavily populated, but again, Japan overall is a higher population density than really hardly, very few places in the world have a higher population density than Japan. So even though this is a somewhat rural area, there's still a lot of folks in and around this small town, but they're even going to get out into the country, into smaller towns. So it's a nice look at something that's not Tokyo, that's not the big metropolitan, huge urban areas of Japan. And that's another reason I like the film too. Now, this is the smallest prefecture of Shikoku, somewhat rural. It's famous for udon noodles. Hey, that's the name of the film, Udon. So the film is named after a noodle. It sure is. It's a type of noodle. Now, Japan is one noodle-loving country, if you didn't know this already. Really, when you go walk down the streets of Tokyo or any small town, any medium-sized town, small town, or village, you'll find somebody with a noodle shop. Who knows how many noodle shops are in Tokyo? But this prefecture, Kagawa, is kind of famous for having even more than average of these noodle shops. And they're everywhere. You can find noodle vendors everywhere in Japan. You college student types certainly probably know at least one Japanese noodle that you're probably very familiar with called ramen. Yeah, that stuff in the little package. But there are actually lots of different noodle types, and the 3 main ones are ramen, but there's also soba and udon. Now, ramen, you get the cheapo, nasty version, and that's fine. It sustains you. But legitimate ramen noodles are wheat-based and are darker yellow than the store-bought stuff you're used to, and way better, I'm assuming. They're thinner in terms of all the Japanese noodles. They're kind of the thinner ones. I kind of consider them like standard, more like spaghetti. But they're longer, thinner, springy, and supposed to be cooked to al dente, which means they're a little firm and too chewy. Soba noodles are quite distinct and probably ones you've not come across yet. They're made from buckwheat flour, which gives them a distinctive brown color and a richer flavor and a much softer, more elastic texture, which makes them excellent for soaking up the broth, which ramen does that too. And then finally, there's udon. And udon are quite distinct in that they're much thicker than ramen noodles, like way thicker, like it would scare you. If you're used to eating ramen, this would scare you. It's that thick. And it's thicker than any spaghetti I've ever seen too. They are also a wheat-based noodle, and they're white in color because they're made from a wheat flour. So you can bleach flour to make it cleaner and lighter. So they're not as dark as soba and usually not even as dark as ramen. They're also supposed to be cooked kind of al dente. So it's a thicker noodle that's firm, so you can kind of bite them in half really easy, or take a bite out of it really easy. Now, all of these noodles, they're not just served straight. Oh, I'd take that back. They can be served just straight up in a bowl of broth. Simple fare. Feeds millions of Japanese every day. However, you can also top them with different meats or vegetables or seasonal accoutrements or spices. And all of these things take on really distinct regional variation. That is, this little town does it one way, and that little town right next door does it the other way. Or in, Tokyo or a big city, this one vendor does soba this way, and the vendor 10 feet from it does soba a different way, or puts different things on, like a whole egg or some shallots or something like that. So noodles really are the base of creating cuisine in Japan. And let's get back to this movie, because this isn't a cooking class, it's supposed to be a movie intro. I just want you to understand that it's like you have regional variations of cuisine in Europe or even America. You have that in Japan and all of Asia as well. You have it everywhere on planet Earth, but it's really noodle based, especially for what we're going to see in this film. So that's all the cooking class you're going to get from me. The rest is up to you to go experiment with. The rest of what I want you to understand, and I'm not going to tell you how much more about this film, is it's a review in looking into modern-day Japanese society. And Japanese society is one that looks and feels very much like society in the West, in Europe or in the United States, in terms of wealth, levels of development, technology, standards of living, the clothes people wear, consumer culture, etc., etc. I mean, if you were plopped down in Japan from here and spoke Japanese, your life would be about the same. They're rich societies. But Japan, unlike the other ones I've just mentioned, has this distinctly Eastern/Japanese quirky eccentricities that make it quite fascinating. That's what I want you to look for in the film. This intense focus on food and food tourism shown in the film is actually just now starting to appear in America, by the way. Again, this film is 10 years old. And we're seeing how many cooking shows have popped up in America just in the last 5 years. So this is a phenomenon that started, actually, I wouldn't say started in Japan, but food is entertainment. And regional variation is something that people go seek out. That's kind of been happening in Europe and Japan for a while, and just now getting to America. But for the rest of this review, for this film as you watch it, focus on food because it's fun, but really think deeper about some of these things. Family relationships, especially traditional Japanese family values. How do they differ from, say, family relationships and family values here in America or the West? Or do they differ? Look for the generation gap between young culture and older culture in Japan. Again, there's also generation gaps in the US and Europe, but it's pretty distinct in Japan. Look for those similarities and differences in Japan versus America. The idea of honor, pay attention to that the whole time. Honor in Japanese society is a really big thing. You think back to, like the warriors and the ninjas and the samurai. Honor is a really big thing. How does that play out in today's world? Honor from a personal standpoint with the main character, but also the honor of the family, which is something that you think you have here in the West, but not as much as you do over in the East. Pay attention to Japanese etiquette. They're meticulous about processes and the way proper relationships are supposed to be done, even in the smallest of things. From the passing of business cards, even to the etiquette of eating udon. Look at all these different things of how they do things very meticulously different that maybe we don't pay as much attention to in the West. And also, one distinct thing you'll definitely see in this film that you won't see in the West at all is Shinto religion. It is kind of been the state religion of Japan since it was Japan. It's Japanese religion dating back to the early 8th century, maybe. Incorporates the worship of ancestors and even nature spirits in a really big way, and a belief in sacred power of the dead, but also objects, inanimate and animate objects. It's a really distinct spin on a kind of a blend of Buddhism, Confucianism, and Taoism from the mainland Asia, and morphed into this very distinctly Japanese religion. You're going to see this kind of right in your face a couple different times when you see shrines that are set up, especially shrines set up to a dead ancestor. So yes, you may have respect for your dead great-grandparents, but it's very different in Japan, and you're going to see some of that in this film. So the other things to pay attention to are the attention to detail in production, in traditional techniques, in respect for artisan, in respect for craftsmanship, even in the kitchen, even in something as simple as making noodles. There's this kind of meticulous attention to detail that garners respect from everybody. That does not happen, by the way, in the rest of the West. That's a theme that was really prevalent in Jiro Dreams of Sushi, for those of you that watched that other Japanese film I put up for this semester, which also, by the way, focused on food. So a lot of those similar elements play into this film as well. I would also remind you once again, as you go out and look at what's on TV later today or for the rest of your lives in America, that this, what I call food fetish, food porn, attention to regional variation in food and recipes that is just now exploding in America. You're seeing that happen in this film, in a comedy film 10 years ago, and it's always been this way in Japan. So we're playing a little catch-up, and I think it's a good thing. I like the idea that we pay more attention to where our food comes from and regional variation in it. However, let's wrap this review up for now, this intro up for now. It is long. It's over 2 hours, but it's lighthearted. It's a long but lighthearted look at a noodle in Japan that shows actually much, much, much more of what's going on in modern Japan and speaks to the roots, the ancient traditions and cultural roots of Japan. So grab a bowl of ramen, because I doubt you got any udon or soba, and enjoy from 2006 Udon.